Manny, or who's the vice president? Anybody?
Vice president?
Do we have
Vice director?
vice chair anymore? I guess we didn't do the election, so, okay, I guess I'll just start it. Keep popping off.
Second, we should try to get back.
Well, yeah, we'll see one more time. If not, we'll try to get the show rolling at 6:05.
While we wait, there's some pretzel snacks over there if anyone wants to grab.
How is everybody doing? How's everybody's fourth?
Very good.
Not bad.
I was able to come to the parade anyway.
You did? You watched it?
I did.
Awesome.
Very good as usual.
Where were you at?
I was near the end, like right in front of the big minimums on the other side of the street, in front of the Mexican food truck.
Okay. That's not a bad location. Yeah.
And, you know, my son-in-law goes down and puts down 8 chairs for the family.
Yeah, everyone's so quick. As soon as we put the notice out, they're like,
Oh, I know, it's just, it's pretty incredible.
Oh, yeah. We had chairs out on the first and kept going every single day.
Yeah. There was even people putting chairs way up the street where the parade didn't even go.
No.
I'd have known, yeah.
Oh, no.
About the research.
The expectation was.
That's the highway.
Whitney, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry.
There we go.
Power of the cell phone. All right.
Awesome. Well, we will let you take it over from now. I think we are ready to begin the board meeting.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm gathering everything I need here. Okay. Sorry. Let's see. Welcome, everyone. I would like to call the July 2025 Parks and Recreation Board meeting to order. Before we move on to the agenda items, I'd like to acknowledge our hybrid meeting format. Board meetings and the public can now attend in person or via Teams. I will now take roll call, and I may have an outdated list of, I do have an outdated list, so please give me grace here. And also can't see who's in the room. So position 1, Laura Borner.
I'm here, remote.
Okay. I believe position 2 has been taken over by Malia.
Yeah, I'm here.
Rushing it. All right. Position 3, Nicholas Borer.
Present.
Position 4, Sheila Bricey.
Here.
Position 5, Manny Ocampo.
Here.
Position 6, Maggie Catlin.
Here.
Position 7 is me. I'm here, just barely. And we have our 2 youth members, Sanvi.
Not in attendance right now.
Okay, and then Reina.
Here.
All right, welcome everyone. At this time, I'd like to invite a motion to approve our May 2025 minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, I think that was, the motion was made by Nick, I think, and then seconded by Malia.
Yeah,
Yes.
good job.
Nice. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, thank you very much. We'll now move on to public comment. Is there anyone in the room this evening or online who would like to make a public comment?
We don't have anybody in the room.
Okay. Is there anyone online, as if I could tell?
We have a guest online, but not public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. We will now move on to comments from the chairperson. I don't have too much to share right now. We have a really packed agenda. I did want to draw people's attention to the Engage Bothell website, where there's actually a few different things happening right now. The Urban Forest Management Plan and the Climate Action Plan are both different ways that people can engage right now, and we're going to learn a lot more about that shortly. I also had a chance to watch Tuesday's, I think it was this week's Tuesday, council meeting, and it was interesting because it was the Arts Commission's turn to have a joint meeting with council. And so it was kind of interesting to watch that and compare it to our experience in a joint meeting. But of course, a lot of what they talked about was the obvious overlap between art and the community and parks and public spaces. And it kind of got me thinking again about ways that we can be collaborating and working together, particularly as we move forward with parks planning projects. Like Park at Bothell Landing is a prime example of that. And they shared that Aaron had recently attended one of their meetings to share what was happening in parks. So I have not had a chance to then dig back and see if I can find that Arts Commission meeting, but I think that might be fun, or if someone wanted to volunteer and watch it and provide a synopsis back to the board, that would also be very interesting in a way that we can keep each other, both of our board, Parks Board and Arts Commission, just collaborating and knowing what the left and the right hand are doing. Maybe in the future we can discuss ways that we can be, coordinating how Arts Commission is, hearing about Park at Bothell Landing, and how we can just be learning from each other. Some other things they talked about were communication between the board and commission and council. And they did bring up our quarterly updates, which is great. And they seem to really like how we're communicating with them. So that brings me to just my next update, which is the quarterly update document that I sent out a couple of days ago. I updated some of the language to reflect some of the discussion that we had regarding communication through the city. And so it would be great if by the end of this evening, I might get a thumbs up to proceed to convey that to council. I don't know. It's really hard because I'm not in the room to see like nodding heads or not.
Yeah, Whitney, I read over the document. The only thing is the change of direction on the dog statue. That was more directed of still interacting with the arts department. I didn't know how we wanted to phrase the, maybe not shift, but a look else in a different angle for it.
Okay.
Danae did ask that the Arts Commission was kind of redacted from that. It's not in the collaboration.
Right, exactly.
Danae asked if that could happen.
Okay.
Yeah, I can work on that for sure. Thank you.
Whitney, when were you hoping to provide that quarterly update, having that the agendas are already filled for July? Were you hoping to just go and do a public comment, or because they don't meet in August?
Yeah, that is tricky. I certainly could do a public comment. That's usually pretty easy. I need to do a word count on it to make sure that I'm within the 2 minutes or whatever. But I could certainly do that and tighten it up if I needed to, or talk fast.
Yeah, and if by any means that you wanted to do this update in September, then I could look at the agenda bills in September, and then you maybe would have a little bit of more meat to add with the pros plan.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know what your timeline was.
I mean, I could also just email it too. It doesn't have to necessarily be, and then come back in the fall with more of a community, what do they call it? Community update agenda section. I'm flexible.
Yeah. I'll lean on the board to decide what you guys would like with that update. But I just know that the agenda's.
Yeah, I don't see that there's an urgency, right? I mean,
I think
since there is a pause in
Yeah.
August anyways for them.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
I
a
don't-
pause for us, so I think September would probably be a good one.
Sounds good. Okay, any other comments? All right. I think we shall move on to our agenda items, as I'm desperately trying to pull up my agenda. July, yay. Oh, sorry, I'm having technical issues.
So the next item, Whitney, is just the special guests.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our next agenda item is a presentation about the pros plan. Aaron Milner, Parks Planning and Development Manager, will introduce this project and the consultants.
All right, thank you, Whitney. So this is an introduction to the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan update that we're going through right now, also referred to as the PROS Plan. As most of you know, the PROS Plan is Park and Recreation's guiding document. It is updated every 6 years, the last being in 2020. So tonight we have with us Anna Laybourne, who is a principal at Design Workshop, the firm that's helping us through this process, and Liu Zhang, who's a landscape architect at Design Workshop as well. They're going to kind of lead you through the what, why, and how of the process that we will be going through, and they'll be allowing a little time for you to hear the themes and priorities of the board. This is an introduction. We have about 45 minutes. This is kind of more of a table setting as much as anything, and for our design team or for our consulting firm to hear what's important to you all. So with that, our teams, we're super excited about this opportunity and the potential for this plan to really shape the future of Bothell Parks. And I know you all are as well. So with that, I will hand it over to Anna and Liu for further introductions and to lead tonight's discussion. Thanks for being with us, Anna and Liu.
Thanks for having us. Are you seeing my screen now as well with the presentation?
Yes, looks great.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for the introduction of this really is the starting place for the project. So we like to get you familiar with what that might include. And for our team, as Aaron mentioned, I'm Anna Laybourne, and with me is Liu, our project manager that worked alongside me for a recent plan leading it for Issaquah, Washington, and Brian, who I'm working with right now in Yamhill County, Oregon. Our team, it also has some consultants that are experts in topics of program analysis, operations and departmental evaluations, and fiscal strategists with Citygate Associates. We knew that those were some key topics that you all needed insight into those governmental operations. So they have joined our team as well, which we really enjoy working with them from some other past projects. You may also be familiar with Burger Partnership. Stephanie and Andy have worked with us on past projects as well, and we love partnering with them to help us with some local insight into the design of park spaces. So those are some of the folks you'll see involved throughout the next year in this process. We like to start off with just reminding folks of what is a parks, recreation, and open space plan, or PROS plan, because there are a lot of things that it's not, that it gets confused with at times. So what it is a long-range planning tool. It helps to evaluate system offerings and comprehensively identify opportunities for improvement. It helps to provide opportunities to align with community values. You'll see that throughout the community engagement. This is a really key moment to do that. And it is intended to be a visionary document, one that establishes goals and directs resources for the city department. And then what it provides is a really transparent communication tool about future strategies, projects, policies, and priorities. So some things it is not, is it isn't a tool for next year's budget to say this is exactly what we'll be doing. We want it to be long-term, so there's more flexibility within what you would take on in that future. Why is this update needed? One is it needs to be updated every 6 years. As Erin mentioned, yours has expired and you'll need a new one in place to be able to seek state grant funds. So that's partly where our timeline comes in of getting this plan created as well. It needs to reflect on current and changing community demographics and recreation trends, knowing that your community has seen a lot of change. It will really update along with that about community values, desires, and those changed needs over that time. It is needed because you've had changes as well about your properties and how they're performing over time. They degrade, so we'll be reassessing that. And also really anticipating and updating a view about capital investments, infrastructure needs, and priorities and where to invest. So it becomes a plan that's really holistic for the city's parks and recreation offerings. It is not a plan for each and every site of exactly what is needed and to be redeveloped on those sites. You'll do individual plans for each of those as you work through them, but it will give some overview of how to think of the system holistically. We talked with your staff and really wanted to dial this in to understand what you will need for Bothell. And this is what we learned from them about some initial project ambitions specific to Bothell. One, that it's a clear, inclusive, and actionable plan. That it aligns with your comprehensive plan, your 2040 vision, and other plans and values. That it prioritizes equity, sustainability, accessibility, and adaptability. Those are common themes for park system plans, but not universal. That was really helpful for us to know that those were things that your community and your staff really cares about this plan representing. That it should reflect the diverse views of the community, not just the averages, but all of the viewpoints that people share and their experiences and needs. And an end goal is that the final document be visually engaging and user-friendly, thinking about your audience of the community, not just an internal document for your staff. And that the plan prioritizes recommendations, implementation strategies, our framework for future investments and grant applications, and that it can guide council, staff, and the community for the next 6 and potentially some actions taking longer of 10 years. So that is overall what we're thinking of for that plan. And I'll next talk about the process to create that. We're looking at this as 4 key steps in this process. One is the startup with initiation and then management throughout the process. The engagement of the community will happen in a number of steps. I'll share how that will take place interwoven with these steps. There's a needs assessment phase early on, and then plan development and adoption. So I'm just going to give an overview of how some of those will play out, what those tasks will be, of what we'll be undertaking under each of these. So first of all, with the project initiation and management, we'll have a kickoff meeting. We're planning to come out here in less than a month to meet and visit and tour and conduct some interviews to start things off. We've been doing some things around project management of refining the schedule for the project, collecting data. That's the stage we're in right now. we are beginning a step of creating a project brand so that this plan creation can be shared out in a way that is understood to the community, as well as website content. The next step, engagement process, there are multiple things that are going to happen in different forms for engagement throughout this process. I'll share this in a schedule coming up. But right now we're in the stages of refining a community engagement plan overall for the entire process and how we'll communicate. We are setting up for focus group discussions. Some of those will take place when we come out for a visit in person, and some of those will happen later. Those are meetings with a select group of people who we know are going to represent some really key interests of user groups, as well as those that have technical insight and understandings that will be invited for those discussions. After that, it'll inform the preparation of a community survey, and that will be widely distributed. We'll really be looking to you for helping to advertise and get the word out about that survey that will help us better understand community needs. That we'll be advertising it also at pop-up events and have materials to interact with people in a way that takes very little of their time for us to give some initial input out at events. And then later in the process, a community workshop. Looks a bit like these photographs you see here of interacting with people and discussing options and strategies for how your system could develop. And for those who aren't able to attend in person, there'll be a meeting in a box option. And lastly, we'll summarize that and share that for that last round in the adoption process of all the ways we've heard and used the input to inform the plan. That is paired with as well with these technical analyses. So there are a number of different things that will be undertaken for us to evaluate your system and provide recommendations. And informed by that community input, these additional tasks really help us understand some of the data points that inform this data-driven analysis. So I'm just going to give a few highlights of a couple of things that these are kind of technical ways of describing what will take place. So I'll just tell you a little bit more detail about some of those with some examples. One is a watershed analysis. You had one in your previous plan in 2020, and we'll be updating that map on the right that you see using a slightly different methodology, but some similar approaches for evaluating who is within walking distance of a park. Another one is part of the needs assessment is a benchmark comparison. We'll be identifying with your staff which communities to compare to that have similar features, and also national benchmarks in order to give some comparison points to say where should you be related to your level of service and your offerings and your funding. So we'll be sharing that information out as just another way to guide and direct, but using another number of endpoints, including the conditions assessment. On the right, it shows a map of of Burien, Washington, that we assess the conditions of all those different parks to get a rating on fair to excellent condition, to get a general understanding of where there may need to be some replacement or updates to those places. So those are some examples within the needs assessment of what will take place. In addition, we're going to be looking at equity priority mapping. This is an example from a community where the top things that they wanted to evaluate about where to focus efforts were some variables like age, ability, and health conditions, exposure to natural hazards, demographic data such as economics and social factors, and as well as their access to parks and tree coverage and facilities. We'll be really tailoring this to your community and your data that's most relevant when it comes to equity and inclusion, and then assessing where within the city may need some additional focus because of that. And that will be helpful in the prioritization efforts we'll be doing for the action items. At the end of this, you may end up with a chart that looks a little bit like the one on the right, where we take all the different ways that we've completed assessments, all the different points of public engagement, and evaluate how we've heard from folks and from the analysis of what's most important. And that will help us identify those priority areas for focus when it comes to park elements, programs, both active recreation and any facility needs. And then we move into the process on the plan development. These are some of the elements that we anticipate including in that, which we know there's a focus on what are you going to have taking on for capital projects and investments and helping to prioritize those. Funding strategies, acquisition strategies for open space, looking at departmental staffing are some of those assessments that will take place. And lastly, we'll organize those within a plan framework. At the bottom here is an example of a plan framework where we identify plan goals, strategies, and action items for implementation. So that's just a preview of things that will come up and just some examples of what that might look like. And then this is an overall general schedule of how this will take place. So as you can see, we're starting off for the engagement with focus groups, and we'll quickly follow up that and informing the survey questionnaire, pop-up events, and interviews happening in September through middle of October. Then we'll take that input and later come back to the community, checking in to see, did we get that right? Did we hear you correctly? Do we have these initial ideas correct in March or to April sometime that year for community workshops and a meeting in a box engagement? We're anticipating wrapping up with the draft plan May in June for those efforts, and then council adoption happening through June and July of next year. That's the overall timeline. So we put together just a few thoughts about some questions that might help prompt discussion. You don't have to answer all of these. If any of them really resonate with you that you want to speak to them, that's just helpful for us as an initial starting place to hear from you all of what you're looking for with this plan. So a few options, I'll just go through them and then you can take some time and just respond to whichever ones you would like. One is in a word or short phrase. What are you most excited about taking on this PROS plan? Another one is, what are some themes you hear from the community about recreation and parks? Maybe you'll have some thoughts about what might come up for us in this process that you hear from the community. What questions do you hope this plan will answer? And what ambitions or opportunities do you hope this plan will capture? So that might just prompt you in thinking of what at this really initial stage we might be looking from you all for some guidance in developing this plan. Lastly, some next steps that we'll have for you all in their role is you'll be providing input to help guide the recommendations and priorities. There'll be some check-in points that staff will have with you all to understand what you're thinking about when it comes to the recommendations and priorities. You'll help spread the word, like I mentioned, about the upcoming survey to help the community get involved, attend those workshops. We want you showing up as much as we want the public there to help us discover solutions together. Show up at the pop-up events and keep the staff there company and sharing your thoughts. And then, of course, reviewing the draft plan. So with that, I'll just go back and allow you some time for discussion. We'd love to hear from you if you have any questions or any insight for us starting things off.
I'll answer this one real quick. For me, it's building connection. I think parks connect so many people within our community together, either physical or interaction based on events or et cetera. But there is so much to build between the people of the community in our parks. And I think that for me, that's what comes to mind, builds connection.
This is Manny Ocampo. I think a word or short phrase, and I'll be practical here. The short phrase is park bond soon. We need to put before the community an opportunity to act on what the board feels has been significant interest in parks, particularly capital projects. And I think that's going to be an opportunity that this PROS plan can perhaps lead us to.
Yeah, absolutely. That was something that really excited us for helping you all, is we've had a lot of great success in seeing those measures pass by wide margins, in fact. And that is such an exciting thing to know that a plan like this can start to build that support and help people understand what will it mean to approve a funding source. So thanks for sharing that.
I would say accessibility and inclusion in the parks. That we have a lot of opportunity to improve both the amount of people that we can serve in our parks as well as like their ability to get to the parks and use them. So taking another look at where our parks are, how can we improve people's access to the parks, and how can we really engage the whole community in parks.
A big one, we often talk about the physical nature of the parks, but programming we know was dropped during COVID and was actually very weak even before COVID. And I think that's something that the community is seeing, that all the communities around us have. So opportunities for classes and different programs for all ages. There's a very big senior population. There's a very big families, lots of families moving into the area. And then all the techies. So you go to like every level. We just don't have programming for so that's a big one.
And I'd want to second that, and a facility to do the programming, which is a bond thing. That's a huge bond thing, huge bond thing.
That is, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And along the same lines, just looking at the all the changes that we've had since the last pro plan within the community, I think is super exciting. Our usage of the parks has obviously changed. And, you know, I love that multi-generational like outlook on how we can make parks here for everyone. And then I have just a question, whether or not we, in this pros plan, will be examining the current parks that we have and their like utilization.
That's a good point, Laura. I feel like there's a lot of parks that are forgotten and not utilized to the full extent they could be utilized.
Yeah, I mean, I just
Of either infrastructure lacking or other reasons.
Exactly.
And are you meaning like how built out they are physically with features, or visitation?
I mean,
Both.
more so around the visitation, I suppose, but it could be impacted by, you know, whatever the offerings are of the park. But not always. You know, it's very interesting. My kids don't like going to busy parks, and the landing is there and always busy, and not very far away is Blythe Park, and it's seldom very busy. The playground is normally empty. So like, why is that happening? How can we redistribute groups? There's other parks that like I pass on a daily basis that I never see people in. So how can we start using those parks
comes to mind
for different things?
That's a wasted space.
Or an opportunity, right?
Yes, currently wasted, but a very good opportunity for something. Dog park.
Oh, that I'd also just like to plug when we're looking at, you know, accessibility of parks and kind of our walkability and access to parks. If we could consider elevation gains, because we have a lot of hills. So instead of just looking at, is it a quarter mile away? If that's a quarter mile, like straight uphill, that's not accessible. And like going in and out, you know, how are the entrances and exits of parks? So I'm just adding a few more dimensions to how we're viewing who can get to a park.
Very good. Yeah, you're speaking Luyu's language here, because she helped work through that idea for Issaquah, which if you know that place, they've got some topography as well. So it's an interesting factor to add into that walk distance.
And I'm just going to add the other one is accessibility, but also tie into wayfinding. Being able to communicate that we have 3 parks that they can interconnect because of our shared pathways with King County, Blythe, Wayne, and we just really need to be able to share that more with the community in order for people to find it.
Very good. Is it all right if I move on to this question here? I don't know if anyone else had a word to add, but we have this question here about what themes you hear from the community. What do you think may come up from them about recreation and parks?
I might be
Dogs and
biased
kids.
here. Like we're all gonna have our own biases, I feel like, from whatever community we're a part of,
Mhm.
but I've spoken to Aaron a bit about it. I definitely hear that we need more tennis courts and pickleball courts. I also think I have small kids. I'm very familiar with all of the playgrounds that we have. As they are getting older, I think we are lacking opportunities or offerings for teens. So I would love to hear that theme kind of play out.
And my teen likes to play pickleball, so there you
There
go.
you go.
I think building off what Nick already mentioned, consistently hearing about lack of programming and lack of a community center in the dog park.
I think one of the things that I've heard from the community is that, and this may come up later in the discussion as well, is that because we've done some pretty large planning around some of our larger parks, some of our budgeting, I'm hoping that the community won't get a little bit of overload of input, that you've asked them so many times of what they want, that they sometimes, their eyes glaze over a little bit. So if there's some way we can freshen that up. But I think one of the things that I've heard most is they'd really like to see something built and something completed.
Enough of the talk. Let's do
Yeah, kind of. And I know that, and every time I've talked to people, it's, I try to relate how the funding goes along with the construction and the planning, et cetera, and then there's staffing issues. And so I think one of the things the plan can do is interconnect those more clearly to the public so that they can see that there is a reasonable timeline. There are reasonable expectations that the community can have related to funding and capital improvements and staffing issues. And, every pros plan that I've ever worked on or been a part of, there is the danger of it being so overwhelming, especially when you get to the bottom line number of $700 million to finish the 10-year plan, that's a little scary too. So a way you could present it that is biteable. Is that a word? Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
I've heard a lot of desire for a skate park too, although that's probably going to get taken care of at Park at Bothell Landing, but I've heard that from the public a lot.
Absolutely.
One thing I kind of wanted to highlight from the last pros plan to this is that, we went through COVID, and I think people sort of have a different view of parks. Of course, we miss our programming, and that's a big thing that I think we should be looking at, what the community wants in terms of programming now. That people during the pandemic turned to parks as like their own, personal oasis. And I think people started to really appreciate parks for mental health and physical health. And so really taking a good look at that, and also how our parks are serving the community as our community is being more and more densely developed. So these places are also important for ecological health, but also our community health. And taking that lens to look at this, because I think there are some parks where people do want that built up active recreation space, but there are also other parks that people still want that quiet sanctuary. And there are places that could, not just try to preserve those elements of parks, but I think could also be enhanced or provide access to in like a slightly better way. There are trails that I like to hike in at Blythe, and they're not really marked very well, but they are built up nicely. But if you didn't know that they were there, you wouldn't know that they were there. So yeah, I think just kind of taking that sort of lens on understanding where the community is now compared to where we were at the last pros plan.
That's a good distinction, Whitney, about like separating recreation and open spaces, which we use the word open spaces, but we don't have one area called an open space. I mean, Wayne could be called Wayne Open Space, and maybe people wouldn't want a dog park there, you know, like wording makes a difference, right? You can call parks open spaces and take away that recreational playground, tennis court feel to it, because it is, we need open spaces, not infrastructure spaces, and that's a good point to bring up.
I took a dive once into the King County Park system, and they sort of have a categorization system. Like you said, they have the such and such open space, and then they have the Middle Bear Creek natural area, and it's all publicly accessible, but it's not necessarily managed the same way or providing the same amenities. And maybe that's something that we look at for Bothell, because it would also communicate to the public, okay, this is what this park is meant for. This is how it's meant to serve the community. Not just these are the restrictions on development at this park, but this is a natural area. That's how it's designated. Those are the, you know, the rules of this park specifically. But then over here, it's something different. It's the play structure.
Well, in support of that, I think we have at least 3 parks or open spaces that have restrictions on them related to what can go on there in terms of active versus passive recreation. So I think that's going to be important to include, because even if we wanted it to be active, there are restrictions that we can't.
So renaming it is actually probably not a bad idea, because it really does convey a different sense to people, you know?
Well, our next question here is about what questions you hope this plan will answer. And you saw we have a number of analyses that will help us answer some things. We've got community survey that will help us better understand how people are feeling about their needs and priorities. But what questions are you hoping specifically this plan might include that you're just wanting to check in and see how we might answer?
I have a few. How is the last pros plan being assessed? And what metrics are you looking at based on the last pros plan? What did we accomplish and why? And how are you incorporating that in the current pros plan?
Yeah, if you want me to answer that one, we're assessing right now the previous plan to see what was completed. What are some things we would want to carry forward? What are some things that were not yet done that may need to be addressed? And also if there were any analyses that we can help show any type of trend lines from what was before to now, we'll be looking at it in that way.
Okay. And then I think you mentioned it, I'll say it again, but who's being served, who's left out, either culturally or even geographically, such as I learned in city council meetings, Snohomish County, and not having enough parks there, or park space that are under Bothell. So that is one thing I want to point out, is understanding the impact of that. You don't have to answer these are just, and then how are we going to include the UFMP program that we're going to talk about later on into the pros plan, and what does that look like and how it goes in the pros plan? The other one is highlighting public and private partnerships. Like, are we able, is that in the pros plan? Are we able to do it like the UW environmental science? How can we incorporate more of the community, but also included business relationships? I think I have community, business and developers, including nonprofits, that kind of thing. What does that look like from a pros plan? That'll go to you also. And then those, and then Also, again, what are the performance metrics that we are going to establish within the city of Bothell to measure our movement on the PROS plan and the results of some of those activities and choices that we've made? So those are my questions.
Great. And I picked up on the one earlier, the question about are any spaces underutilized or not as built out, not as well visited. So we'll note that one of something you're hoping to have answered. Any others? Okay. And then other things, ambitions or opportunities you hope this plan will capture is our last question.
So I was going to go back to the previous question. Sorry about that. I'd like to see the plan be flexible enough to change, to changing demographics. So we're building so much downtown here. The needs are going to change. I think that foresight would be important to be in that plan and be able to adapt to changing needs, which 6 years is short, but then 6 years, a lot can happen in 6 years too.
Think about
That's right.
Sorry.
I think my comment kind of goes under both questions, but I would like to see us look at the park system as a whole and try to figure out how we can have some unique parks along the way that are serving everyone's needs. So instead of having every neighborhood park have a little grassy area and some sort of play structure and a picnic table, like how can we diversify our park system to serve more people and maybe add some more interest that people will want to visit other parks, especially in some of those underutilized places. And then this is gonna definitely happen, but I really want to understand what the community wants from like a recreational programming. I mean, that's really important. And so trying to figure out what is important to them on a large scale.
I'd like to see more development on the north end of town, Snohomish County side of things too.
So that means acquisition then, or taking, because there isn't
Both, I
enough
think.
property out there.
Both, I think,
Yeah.
if there's opportunities there.
I mean, before it all gets into more.
Not making any more land.
Yeah, I think just, Whitney kind of already talked about this too, just making sure that people have access to green space as things get developed. So if you're living in a more dense area, are there trees? Are there like spaces that you can go for calm and quiet? Are there spaces that a kid can go climb? And so making sure that those spaces still exist as things densify and planning for
I
that.
think acquisition is key, because from what it sounds like, there is no process for that right now. And as longer we wait, the less likely there's going to be opportunity to acquire anything. Limit. So that should be a high priority.
I think an opportunity that hopefully the plan will capture is that, as I mentioned before, there are some exciting projects on the near horizon that we've communicated to the public through workshops and surveys, being the park at Bothell Landing, the new all-inclusive park, the talk about the skate park maybe being included downtown. And there's an excitement that I think has been generated. The feedback I got is, that sounds great. When are we going to see that? And so I think there is a bit of momentum for a higher recreation level of support in the community that perhaps we haven't had, particularly coming out of COVID, because that was such a downer for everybody, that people are really looking for the opportunity to look up. And I think recreation and parks and cultural arts can really have an impact and take advantage of that opportunity, because I see it right now.
thing I would like to look for to see if there's an opportunity is if, I've talked about this a lot, so if there is an opportunity to have some sort of 2 to 4 mile loop trail somewhere in the city of Bothell. I work in Seattle. Every single person, not every single, a very high proportion of patients I work with, one of the most valuable things in their life is their ability to walk around Green Lake one time, multiple times, like a few times a week. I can't tell, there's so many people where that is like such an important thing for their community and for their health. And so if we could find somewhere in Bothell to give people that same kind of ability to just go and recreate in a really simple way, I think there are probably some places that we might be able to do something like that.
Wayne. I just did the loop.
Yeah.
There is a loop there. A dog on a leash.
Well, we will have more opportunities with you all to check in on ambitions, opportunities, share with you the analyses we complete that might spark some ideas or some additional thoughts. But this has been really helpful as a starting place to hear from you all and to get some initial starting to ground our thoughts as we come out for our visit soon.
All right, and as Anna mentioned, this isn't the first time, so appreciate everybody's participation. Anna, Lou, appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you. So we have another special presentation. I'd like to introduce Cameron Colvin, City of Bothell Planner and Community Development.
Thanks, Whitney. Let me get my screen shared here quickly. Okay. Yeah, so it's been a while since I've been before you all to give an update on the urban forestry plan. I think I last came before the board probably last fall. And so we've had a lot of movement on the plan over the past 6 months or so. So I wanted to run through what's been happening during that time and some of the initial findings and new data that we have available now to kind of run with and share what our plans are for the remainder of this year regarding this project. So since we last spoke, we selected and entered into contract with a consultant, Planet Geo, to help us with this project. We started assessing basically existing conditions, looking at our existing tree and landscaping codes, and how all of our different departments interact with trees, whether that be through community development and permitting, our parks, as well as public works and our street tree programs. And then 2 of the major kind of data collection pieces were our first street tree inventory, which mapped trees within public right-of-way throughout the city. And then we also conducted an updated tree canopy assessment to look at tree cover citywide. So I'll talk through both of those in a bit more detail here. Just looking at kind of project schedule. So now that we are through with a lot of the initial data collection pieces, we're going to be ramping up some of the public engagement over the summer. And then we are hoping to have an initial draft in the early fall for review. And our goal is to come back to council in December for plan adoption. Next slide. There we go. So as mentioned earlier in this meeting, we do have an initial community survey that's ongoing right now. I believe that link was also sent to you all over email. So this will remain open through July 18th, and it's a pretty short 5 to 10 minute survey that'll really help us start to identify what the main community needs and priorities are as it relates to trees. So if you haven't already, please take a look at that and fill it out, and also help us spread the word. Really, word of mouth is really helpful to get us increased
How
participation.
many participants have you had so far?
I believe right now we're sitting at about 60 or so. So
Oh.
yeah, hoping to get that up. We have, yeah, we just put out the e-news last week that went out. We've had signs up downtown for 4th of July. I got some exposure, but yeah, looking to boost those numbers.
I put it on through my personal account.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, it also went out through our social media, so you are welcome to share that directly on, from the city's social media page as well. Want to flag just a couple of other engagement opportunities that'll be forthcoming. So we are looking to host 2 additional public focus groups, likely in the late August or early September. So these are going to focus on key topic areas that we want to explore in greater detail. So our development regulations or street trees. And then we'll be tabling at Sustainamania in September and sharing kind of draft materials there, getting some additional public input. And then we are looking to host a final open house likely in October, which if the timeline works out, we could maybe coordinate with our annual Arbor Day celebration, which would be great. So I'm going to talk through a little bit of the initial data that we've gathered and what we found from that. So the street tree inventory was gathered on the ground by certified arborists who went out and collected data in terms of tree locations, species types, size, their condition, any maintenance needs, and then also flagging any potential infrastructure conflicts with nearby sidewalks, roadways, or overhead utility lines. So in total, we mapped a little over 15,000 trees within public right-of-way. Out of those, there were about 228 unique species that were found. And the map over to the right shows you what that distribution looks like. We've got a lot of trees in Bothell because that's just reflecting what's actually within the right-of-way or roadway.
Does that include unopened right-of-way?
Sorry?
Does that include unopened right-of-way also?
Like private roads?
No, right-of-way that hasn't been developed.
Oh, gotcha. No, it's mostly.
So it's developed right-of-way.
Yeah,
Just
yes,
wondered.
yes.
Thank you.
I saw them in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's right. Toward-
Yeah. So looking at the species distribution, there's a large percent of red maples, about 16%. That came out pretty substantially as the most common species, followed by Douglas firs and western red cedars. And in the pie chart on the right, that's showing the top 10 species, and then all the others had a relatively small percentage, about 1% or less. So a general rule of thumb when we look at tree diversity is the 10-20-30 rule. So it's recommended that amongst an entire tree population that you have no more than 10% of the same species, no more than 20% of the same genus type, and no more than 30% of the same family. So when we looked at the results of our species distribution, it suggests that, since there is a larger concentration of certain species populations, that may pose some risk in terms of exposure to pests or climate changes, things of that nature. So as we move forward and maybe look at a planting strategy, we can try to broaden that out based on the results of the species distribution. Looking at the size and age of trees that were mapped, the average diameter was 10 inches and the largest that was inventoried was 75 inches. The graph on the screen shows the city's distribution by size ranges, and then the red bar to the right of that is kind of an ideal distribution. So you'll notice that we have a lot of medium-sized trees that were inventoried in that 6 to 18-inch range, and less of the very small younger trees and less fully mature trees as
Size
well.
and age
This is-
aren't correlated,
This
though.
is street inventory still.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Size and age don't necessarily mean correlation, though, so that seems kind of weird to go have those as associated. Some trees just don't get big.
Yeah, it is dependent on species type.
Yeah.
But this kind of gives,
Especially when they're confined in cement and they're in some
Yes.
horticultural variety, right?
Yes.
So it's just
That
a
is-
40-inch tree doesn't mean it's a young tree. It could be an old tree. It's just,
yes.
so that's kind of a weird
But
comparison.
yeah, that's a good qualifier as well. This is just looking at trees within public right-of-way that do face different constraints that, than, say, for instance, trees in our parks and open spaces. And then in terms of overall condition, a relatively small percentage were dead or in critical condition. Only 2% that were inventoried were recommended for removal or replacement, either due to decline, constricted growing areas, or conflicts with nearby infrastructure. And then in terms of the major observations, 25% or 24% showed potential conflicts with vehicle clearances, 10% with overhead utilities. About 7% of trees inventoried had some sort of related hardscape damage, kind of like the image you see to the right, impacting sidewalks or roadways. 4% potentially obstructing pedestrian access or walkways, and then 3% that were showing either signs of insect infestation or disease. And then looking at the tree canopy assessment, so this looked at tree cover throughout the entire city using GIS data. So we looked at data from the year 2023, and the updated data showed that the city has about 44% land cover by trees. And when we break that out from our urban growth area just outside of city limits, that area has about 35% cover. One of the other things we looked at was tree canopy potential. So excluding our existing buildings, impervious surfaces, easements for utilities and things of that nature, how much land could potentially be utilized for new plantings, and that's about 15% citywide. And then we broke the new tree canopy data down by different areas to kind of get a sense of specific neighborhoods or areas throughout town. So this is showing by sub-area what tree cover is. You'll see kind of our largest percentages are where we have kind of natural open areas, Shelton View Forest, for instance, the area just south of Bothell Landing, as well as up in the Fitzgerald area. And then we also have some kind of heat map or hexagon maps that show in a little bit finer detail where those greater pockets of tree canopy cover are. And the area in light yellow shows areas that are lacking tree cover or most impervious. So King County Conservation District and Planet Geo worked on a previous tree canopy assessment back in 2015. So we now have a little bit of data to compare to. And so we can start looking at trends over that period of time. So when we compared the 2015 results, those were updated slightly to incorporate new technology and make sure that methodology is aligned. We saw that citywide, we have seen a little less than 1% decrease over that 8-year period. And I'll go through in a little bit of detail on why that is. Obviously, we've seen more tree cover loss in certain areas, but some of those losses are being balanced out to some extent by natural growth in our protected critical areas or existing open spaces. So this map here kind of shows which neighborhoods have seen overall tree canopy losses, and those areas in green show where we've had increases. And then similarly, this map shows in a bit finer detail where those largest changes in tree canopy cover have occurred during that time period. So the areas in dark red are where there were large losses in tree cover, and the areas in dark green show where we've had the largest increases. Interesting to look at. And the last map I'll show here was a tree planting prioritization model that was put together. And so essentially this was an equity assessment to take the new tree canopy data, overlay that with demographic indicators to identify where throughout the city would tree planting strategies have the most equitable impacts. And so the areas identified in dark blue on the map were the ones that kind of popped out as the census blocks with the greatest potential. And that's all I have for today. Do y'all have any questions I can answer?
Is there plans or recommendations to plant or get people trees to plant in their?
Yeah.
A follow-up to?
Yeah, so this was, like I said, this was mostly the initial data collection, and we're in the process of developing the full recommendations from that. There's a couple of different strategies, so I'll go back a little bit. So out of that, out of our existing tree cover, 63% of that is on private land. So private land definitely has to be part of the strategy. And so looking at, how we can encourage individual homeowners and property owners to plant trees is definitely a part of that. How we can establish city programs, more tree giveaways, and incentives on that end will be a piece of it. And then as well, reassessing our development regulations, making refinements there for new development that comes in, making sure we preserve our largest and most significant trees that way as well.
I'm a little surprised, given what you just said, about if that's highlighted in the survey, that you haven't got back, because I hear all the time, that development took down every single tree on the block.
Yes.
And so I think it's really important that people, if they see this as an opportunity to influence development regulations in terms of tree retention or tree replacement, if that's the right word, I think would really help gin up that feedback. And I'll certainly tell the people that I know that have that as a concern to get involved with this project.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the most common comments that we hear from the public is a large concern with a lot of the new development and how they have to take large segments of tree out to accommodate that new development.
Right.
And so I think this data is especially useful there when we look citywide. Obviously the housing crisis is something we're trying to address. And so there's definitely a balance there between, how we accommodate new housing while also meeting our need for tree canopy cover and open space throughout the city.
From a parks board or just parks standpoint, what is it that we can do? Because like Whitney's nonprofit plants at Wayne all the time and redoing, and we're planting tree, I say we, but there's an effort forward, especially in the parks, to be able to develop and put in new trees. And most of this conversation obviously is about within the streets. How is that tied to parks, or what is the ask? And if there is that participation with parks, how is that being included in the pros plan?
Yeah, so I think that's definitely something that we can dig into more detail, especially with the overlaps with the pros plan. But that'll be a key piece of it, because like y'all were saying, those are our main opportunity areas, especially where we have direct control over the land. Like I said, 63% is private land. I think the city's proportion is about 7% of total land cover. So, you know, those are areas where we can have direct influence. We can partner with organizations and make stuff happen fairly quickly. But all of this is relatively new for the city of Bothell. This is our first urban forestry plan.
Okay.
So we're building out the program from
Right.
here.
Okay.
So the opportunities are endless, as long as we secure funding.
I was part of this was like 15 years ago, a tree giveaway thing in Seattle, where I was just helping teach people how to plant and giving them away. But not only is it like, does it actually give trees and get them in the ground, but I just think that it's a really good way just to teach people and learn. And then even if they don't get a tree, it's an opportunity to get the word out. You get the fun. I think that's a grant kind of thing, probably.
What kind of information do you feel like is helpful from the public, and how does that change your decision making?
I guess the survey that we have out right now, a lot of the questions that it is asking is kind of how the community engages with trees the most, which benefits are most important to them, what challenges they face. So whether that be individual homeowners that have had conflicts with trees falling on their property, or proposing conflicts, things like that. So I guess right now, the best feedback is really identifying those most immediate community needs and challenges. And then we can kind of run with that in addition to some of the findings that we've gotten from the data collection, and really flesh that out in more detail.
Is there a target canopy coverage?
We don't, but that is something that we're looking at as part of this plan. So other jurisdictions have adopted tree canopy targets. And so one thing we'll be exploring is looking at other jurisdictions, how effective those have been. I think I posed that question to Planning Commission and Council the last time I was before them. And there was some interest around the topic, but I wouldn't say substantial.
I mean, other cities in the, Seattle's at 20, whatever.
Yeah.
A good, kind of industry standard, 40% is a pretty good standard.
Right.
We're at 44.
Yeah.
We're not doing bad. I want to be clear about that, and everybody should be clear about that.
Yeah, I think that they definitely recognize that, Bothell is a little unique. We have a lot of critical areas that obviously can't be developed. And that, like I showed, based on the changes that we've seen over the past 8 years, it seems like relatively we have pretty good protections in place that can be tweaked and improved upon. But yeah, in terms of tree canopy goals, I think the discussion around that was kind of, they want to see kind of more qualitative improvements, or there's other ways to reach our goals, I guess, in terms of.
So, but then what's the goal? Just to increase canopy? Is that the goal? I'm not understanding.
Or increase canopy in certain areas, maybe not just overall.
Yes.
It could be targeted in certain spots that are lacking. It doesn't have to be an overall percentage increase.
Yeah. So I don't know if they reached the conclusive.
But that's what I'm asking. There
Yeah,
has to
yeah.
be a clear direction.
The
It doesn't seem
general-
like there is. It's just, here's what we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think the general consensus is, yes, ideally, we'd like to retain at least what we have, look at planting programs to potentially expand that, and then while also making sure that we address housing, which, you know, for those two groups, Plan Commission and City Council are really high on their priority lists, so.
Right, right. Yeah, I've heard some of those discussions and see where they're coming from in terms of trying to balance tree canopy and also, you know, increasing and making development more dense, and that makes sense. But you know, in some of these maps that you show, the polygons are really large, and then you break them down to be much more granular. That kind of gets to the point of it, where it's saying like, okay, yeah, overall, our city is doing okay with tree canopy coverage when you look at the whole thing. But there are big pockets that have big problems. And we're seeing that with, you know, human health or urban heat islands. We're seeing that with water temperatures being too hot for fish. So, you know, and that waterway moves then down through the next system. So we do have, I guess, a lot of potential and room for improvement. And so I would encourage making a goal. Maybe it doesn't have to be for the citywide, but maybe for, you know, each pocket or neighborhood should have at least some goal. And of course, looking at human health and equity in terms of where we put those new trees, but also looking at multi-benefits, like could we put more trees in parks that help provide access to green space for more people? Could we provide more trees in riparian areas that also improves water quality? Those are just some thoughts.
I agree, Whitney. My first thought was the Sammamish River. As we know, it's just covered in blackberry and the only trees around there are trees that are gonna die in the next 10 to 20 years. And then it's gonna be really hot. So,
Are we, I think the city of Bothell is generally kind of looking at this, but are we kind of considering, you know, as some of these neighborhoods become more and more dense and we lose some of that canopy, like the opportunity to add trees around sidewalks? Because from an accessibility standpoint, you have debris, which can be a problem, but having a sidewalk with no coverage from the sun is also a big accessibility thing, especially as we get warmer and warmer. So are we looking at that as well, of like, where are people walking, where are main kind of biking and walking trails, and how can we get some coverage in those areas?
Yeah, so that's something that is specifically called out by City Council in their 2040 vision. And one of the main drivers of why we wanted to get this street tree inventory completed is that this will help us identify where those gaps are, and working with our capital program to hopefully fill those gaps, in addition to private development as it comes in, make sure those are filled.
So in any new infrastructure you're building, I would hope you're making many zones in the right of way to allow for that too. I would hope that's part of development, if that makes sense.
What do you mean by
put a
many
tree along the sidewalk like she's talking, and it's not heaving roots, you know, roots aren't heaving the sidewalk 30, 40 years from now. And so you're planting the right trees in the right place, and there's enough amenity zone where you can plant those trees along the sidewalk.
Yeah, so one of the things we're looking at as part of this plan is updating some of our construction standards. Because one of the other things that they definitely identified through the street tree inventory was that most of those trees that were inventoried that did have conflicts were due to too small of planting areas, too skinny of landscape strips, things like that, that are.
Wrong tree in the wrong place.
Yes, wrong tree, wrong place, exactly. So that'll definitely be something that is addressed in this plan. And then we're also, as an additional kind of deliverable, working on better right tree, right place guidance to be a resource to people within the city, as well as internal operations for what works well in certain conditions, as well as to help private homeowners that want to replace or plant new trees.
Does Bothell have a street tree list?
We have a recommended species or tree species list, but it's a little outdated, and so.
So are developers held accountable to that? So with that, then I would encourage you to, not just do species, because there's tons of cultivars of species that are appropriate, which gets you a wider variety of trees too. So everybody's always, you gotta have the native, you gotta have the native. No, there's a lot of cultivars of other trees that have different growing conditions that are appropriate and increases diversity. I would encourage that.
Actually, their street tree list, I think, has very few neighbors on it from what I remember seeing. It actually has some invasive trees in it.
Yeah, that was
The Norway maple.
I would point out, like, something that probably exists in a lot of Bothell, but exists across the street from me, which is, I live on the main road coming down from Bothell High School down by McMinimans, and it's a steep hill, and the main sidewalk that goes down that, the top half has no tree coverage in it, and there's a skinny little strip of grass, and I called the city and I was like, hey, can I plant trees? And they said, absolutely not. There's a reason there's no trees there. And they left it at that. So, but the other side of that sidewalk, there's, I don't know, 1 or 2 acre plot with a small house on it that at some point is gonna get developed. And it seems like there could be some opportunity there to try, if we don't have enough strip area to get a tree in there, to have some sort of regulations to try to get the tree on the other side. Because that is a major pathway. Most of the people from West Hill are walking up and down that. So that would be, there's probably a lot of areas like that where, like, if we don't have the it's a busy path. We as a city don't have the land to get trees in there. Can we look at the development in terms of, you can still do a massive development and make room for a few trees. So.
Yeah, I wonder if thing was for.
I said I would buy them and
or-
plant them, and they said no.
I don't know.
I don't know.
There used to be beautiful trees there before the sidewalk went in, but it was obviously a really dangerous street to walk without a sidewalk, and one that people used to connect to Bothell High School and Pop Keeney. So yeah, having something creative on the other side would be nice. I think it's like, for the feedback you hear from the community, it's difficult to see those trees go down, like emotionally. Like that's where I walked all my babies every morning when it was too hot, and then the trees are gone. It's hard, but it's safer now. So, but having something coordinated would feel better.
I bring that up not because like that one thing, but I just think that also probably exists in a lot of places.
There we
And
go.
maybe like a place we could look at what we're gonna do about the tree and kind of what we can do.
Other comments?
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Very interesting.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we will hopefully have some more detailed draft materials to share with you all, probably in early fall once we come back from recess. So we'll kind of coordinate on schedules, and hopefully I can provide another update later this year.
Great.
Thank you, Cameron.
Thanks so much. We'll work to also spread the word about the public engagement opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have a staff brief about all the amazing things that are coming up.
Yes, I will keep it pretty brief. We just wanted to give a general update on a couple items. Summer programs and events, they are going. We're doing pretty well on all of that. Tomorrow is our first Music in the Park. So we are trajectorying a good 1,000+ attendees per usual on the music nights. And then next week will be our first Movies in the Park, utilizing North Creek Sports Field. Really excited to say that we did purchase this, it's called Moby Mats. They're accessible pathways, and we're deploying them out at the North Creek Sports Field. So it allows people with any mobility accessibility needs to get onto the grass. So we tested it out last week. We had them shipped a couple months ago, but we finally tested them out, and they'll be a good alternative to have out in the grassed area. And we're gonna test them with the movie nights and see if we ever deploy them at future programs and events. So this week we have music. Next week is movies, and then carries on the season. Every other week is a different thing. And then in the month of August, we will have the kids concerts and programs. Our two seasonals right now, some of you may have met them. I think you might have met them on the walk. Colton and Cameron, they're assisting recreation and community events. They are going to spearhead some other alternative programs. We call them pop-ups in the park throughout the season, but they have been supporting 4th of July, so they're debriefing on 4th of July and now supporting the other events. So we look forward to seeing what other alternative programs they'll provide. In the same vein of conversation, we just want to let you know the second community workshop for the skate park and pump track with the consultant grind line is July 24th. So that's a second workshop. We had the first one in May where Grindline presented what it is to have the conceptual design of a skate park and pump track at Park at Bothell Landing. So that design process is in conjunction with the whole Park at Bothell Landing. It's just a focus group. So they'll have the second workshop that highlights the alternative design. So people will get to actually see what was, taken away, just like what we've seen in the other workshops. So feel free to attend July 24th in council chambers from 6 to 8. It's not required, but if you're available, wonderful. Just other updates is capital projects. You have heard today from the pros plan. There will be more conversations in September. Between now and September, Erin and I have a lot going on with the pros plan. So by the time we see you in September, we're probably going to be refining the community survey. We'll probably have a long list of all the pop-ups that we're going to go to in the community in September and October. So just wanted to let you know on that update. We'll try to keep you relatively updated through email. I know Anna, the consultant, alluded to and kind of shared that they will be here on site in August. There is no requirement for the board. We did that separate from a board meeting. They're here to kind of do what they said, needs assessment, get familiar with Erin, get familiar with other sub-consultants. They will host 2 focus groups. So focus groups are essentially like what we had today with them. We have 2 stakeholders that we have identified for the August time slot. One will be our nature restoration conservation group. So there's about 15 to 20 people or organizations that we've done outreach to invite them for that special focus group. And the second one is informal leaders in the community. So it's a blend of people that know industry trends, people that can tell us about cultural priorities, programming that's currently happening. But we have kind of a good list of about 40 or 30 to quite a few in the informal leaders. So Anna and Louie will, manage those focus groups. We will be there to support them. The intent behind the focus groups is truly to extrapolate information of how do people have a pulse on the community and how they're, I don't know exactly the format, but how the format it will help them educate them how to create the community survey. So those 2 focus groups will be in August. There is no requirement to be attending. We'll have that August 7th, and then August 8th, Erin and Nick, possibly myself, will be doing a large tour with the consultant so they can see kind of the variables that you've talked about today. Any questions on the pros plan before I switch gears? No? Okay. And then I just wanted to give you a real quick update on the Form Wing Golf Course master planning. So the master planning kickoff, initiation meeting is the end of July. So we really won't see much coming to the board probably till winter time on the Form Wing Golf Course, because there's the kickoff, the initiation, the management, the scoping, all those fun details. And it kind of helps Erin and I with that too, because we're launching the pros plan at the same time. So we'll definitely keep you updated about roles and expectations and how the master planning is going to go. The nice thing with the master planning for Form Wing Golf Course is, unlike the pros plan, there's no hard deadline on certain things. Like pros plan needs to be done by June 2026 to go to writing, for approval for RCO. Anything else you want to add to the Formerly Golf Course? It kind of gives a good trajectory of where we're at. Kickoff meeting end of July and then coming back to the board probably in winter.
Yep. And then on the back nine, our Public Works Department is working full speed ahead on the Juanita restoration project as well. So that's full on in design right now.
And right now, with the Park of Bothell Landing, we're still in that design phase. The consultant is still refining those areas that they really want community input on. We did have a little bit of a smaller turnout at the Inclusive Playground focus group workshop, but we're hoping that if the consultant decides that they want to do a second one, they would have another one. It does sound like the consultant, which you've met, is site workshops. They might want to host an open house in September to kind of revisit everything that we've been doing. So I'll definitely keep you all up to speed on that. We're also, as Aaron and I and Manny even alluded to, there's a lot going on in the community, and we don't want to throw out the Park of Bothell Landing at the same time as Pros Plan and the Wayne Golf Course. So we're trying to just master the schedules of how to really capture people's attention with those. So those are the main updates regarding the project timelines. And then just a reminder of a notice of no meeting in August. So our September schedule will probably still be a little bit hefty, but it's Pros Plan related. By that time, summer events will be done. We'll recap summer events. And I'm sure there's going to be some other updates from Nick in September. I'll kind of leave it to, so those are my main updates. I guess, was there any questions for me?
No questions. I just want to, I didn't realize we weren't having an August meeting. So I just wanted to do a quick update on the,
Okay. Yeah.
do you have the slides?
Yeah, I'll share it real quick.
Just real quick versus me passing out black and white. So I met with a gentleman in Selah, Washington. His name is Jack McIntyre. He does both wood carvings and also stone. So unbelievable, I'll just say. I mean, the talent is amazing. The guy's quite the character, but so he, the wood carvings would take 16 weeks. And there is the 2 foot or the 3 foot for the wood carving. And the stone sculptures, which he has, which would obviously last longer, are much more expensive. He usually does it for 10,000. He said he could go down to 8,000 for us, given the story behind it, though the funding that the family has is 6,000. I haven't taken this to the family. I wanted to make sure that I showed you. I had reached out to another person that did exclusively dog wood sculptures, and she never responded. So I tried multiple times. So I also, Nick wanted to make sure and see this too. So I just wanted to make sure that the board saw where we were with it. And my next steps would talk to Nick and Blaine and then reach out to the family. Are there any questions, Whitney or Laura, from your end or anybody here?
Did he say with the Western Red Cedar, like how many years that he would expect?
Yeah, he would
last?
expect, that's why I put there would have to be yearly maintenance from the parks team, but using marine spar varnish, he said it should last 20 to 30 years minimum.
It might be interesting too with that contract with him is maybe he could come out and do his specialty varnish too. I don't know.
Yeah.
On the maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I can get more information on that. But yeah, that would, but I want to make sure the family knows from a cost standpoint. I told him that we only had 6,000 as the final amount. And he said he just can't go that low just from a cost and time for him. So, because it takes up to 24 weeks for that and 16 weeks for the wood carving.
And the prior one was wood, right?
Yes. And it wasn't treated though.
Yeah.
So
How much is the total? Is it, so it's 1,050?
1,050 for the larger one and plus shipping.
It just comes down to if you guys have preference of stone over wood.
Yeah. So, okay.
I guess my only question would be whether or not we can not use a local artist.
Yeah, I have tried. I did the Native American Pursue. I've looked at Bothell. There were none that were listed in Bothell for wood carving. So that was what limited it.
Okay, yeah, no, I was wondering if we are able to go with like someone who does custom bronze statues or something, but that we find on the internet rather than locally.
I think the bronze was getting out of our price range significantly.
Yeah, the bronze is even more expensive than the stone.
This looks great. I thank you, Sheila, for putting in all this time and effort, and it
Oh,
looks like
it was a great trip. The guy is quite the character, and his whole front yard is his studio. It was pretty wild.
I guess I would lean on reaching out to Doug Allen's family and see
Okay.
where they stand on this, because they are quite different, and I could imagine too the stone would be much less likely to be stolen or tipped over or something like that. And see what they say. And I also wanted to ask if there were any ideas on how to sort of make up the funding gap, if there was like, someone in the community that would want to do a GoFundMe to close that gap, or how we'd manage that.
Whitney, I think it would be a discussion with Nick. I know Sheila's going to bring it to Nick because we do have allocated funds within the Parks Department for art, not in the Arts Commission, in the Parks budget. So I think that would just be a conversation too. If you all did decide to go to stone, what would that be?
And without Nick here, I'll
Yeah.
set up something
Yeah.
separate, but I wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of it. Thank you.
My concluding notes are just thank you all to who supported the 4th of July. I know Laura and her whole family were in the parade along with Sheila. It was great. And you got to participate too. Did you enjoy yourself? Yeah. We all got rid of candy pretty quick.
Yes, we did.
I think we were just too excited and just throwing it like Main Street, forgot about Bothell Way.
Yeah.
But I sincerely appreciate all the efforts that come into anybody participating in it and volunteering their time. We have now got a taste of what it is to be in the parade, so I think we're going to go up another scale next year, just so that we actually continue this each year. I think it was a great ending. Laura, again, thank you and your entire family. Your guys' shirts were so cute.
They had special shirts made for.
And Whitney, I know you got to participate from Whale Scout, so I
Yes.
appreciate that as well. But that really concludes everything we have. Manny?
If you're,
Yeah.
I did attend the Breyer concert in the park
Oh, okay.
last night, mainly because my daughter was performing, but, she did fabulous, her group. But 2 comments. One, they can't compare to ours. They're a much smaller city. They did have an excellent sound system though, but it was really good to see how another city is doing it. And, there's concerts in the park all over. But I'm very proud of the ones that we do because the feedback I always get, in fact, I talked to the mayor of Breyer, mentioned that I'm from Bothell. Oh, you guys put on great concerts.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, it's always great to see this time of the year, all the music's in the park taking place, and it is the special time for parks right now. So I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, if y'all feel interested, walk on down to the park tomorrow. It's going to be packed. That was something too, just to let everybody know. We have been putting out a lot of notices about parking because parking does become a problem down there. We have done that. We've done the best that we can. We've created maps and everything that we've put out on social, our pages, Facebook pages, everywhere that we can, because this first group last year just brought so many people, and those who aren't from Bothell don't know that there's no turnaround in the small parking lot. And we cannot close down that parking lot because it is ADA parking. So just a note to self, if you hear about that in the community, we can't close down the parking, but we have alternative options out there. But other than that, thank you, and no meeting in August. Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.